Hey y'all, welcome back to the channel. It's Adrienne. Hope you guys are doing good today. So today is Thursday, July 14th. I wanted to go ahead and take this time to do my video on my experience with FedEx. Starting from the beginning, if you remember, sorry, my glasses are fogging up, but if you remember from my update video that I did last weekend, I told you that I had initially got a job as an apprentice tailor. I realized that, you know, I was gonna need something to make up the gap because that job was not the best paying job. Even though I enjoyed it, I enjoyed the people that I was working with, especially. I ended up just applying for jobs on Indeed, and I came across the FedEx position, and I was like, okay, you know, I have done this before with Amazon, so it's just like a different company, basically the same job, different company. Anyway, I applied for the job on Indeed. The day that my van broke down and I got the Lyft ride, one of the guys that picked me up actually was driving a Lyft rented vehicle. He was a trainer for FedEx. And I was like, oh my God, like that, it was just so weird. And that's been happening to me, like this is kind of sidebar, but that's been happening to me a lot here lately. Random events like that where I meet someone and it's like something that we have in common. I was driving this lady one day, ended up taking her back to an apartment complex, the apartment complex that my kids and I first stayed at when we first moved to Morrisville. Like she stayed in the same apartment complex, the same building, the same floor that we lived on. It was really wild. But anyway, he started telling me about the job. He's like, oh yeah, we get a lot of people that used to work for Amazon that come over here and they find it, you know, so much more easier, I guess, enjoyable. It's not, you know, a lot of heavy packages. This is what he was saying, okay? Stay with me. He was like, yeah, it's not a lot of heavy packages, blah, blah, blah. And he starts telling me about the job and it's salary versus hourly. So I'm like, okay. And then he was telling me, yeah, you don't work all day. You just get off, go home at a decent time. So I'm like, okay, all right. So I'm like, okay, great. That night, I ended up getting like one of those little messages, and it said, basically saying you can respond or send FedEx, or not FedEx because it's not directly FedEx, but you can send the company a message, you know, showing your interest in the job, basically. So I, you know, crafted a little message like, hey, you know, looking very excited, looking forward to hearing from you, blah, blah, blah. I got a message from a text message from the hiring manager for this company. You know, he's like, hey, just reaching out, if you're still interested in the job, blah, 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 let's move forward, that kind of thing. And so I responded back. And so he was asking me if I had time to talk right now. And I was like, yeah, sure. So anyway, long story short, he called me. He was giving me, you know, a whole description of the job, selling it. Like, he's like, oh yeah, you know, it's completely different from Amazon. You know, you're gonna get off at a decent time. You know, we're all about that balance between work life and home life. And, you know, he was saying that I was going to work from like 7:30, 8 a.m. in the morning and be able to get off at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So immediately, you know, I perked up, especially when you're talking about a salary job. I'm like, okay, that sounds great. You know, I'm not working long hours. I'm not working at night. I'm not delivering at night. In the description for the job, it was saying something about you need to be prepared to lift up to 150 pounds, something like that. So that I was really, you know, interested in that part. I was like, well, you know, is that true? Like, how does that work out? He was like, oh no, like he assured me, he's like, no, I never lift that amount. He's like, at the most, it might be like 50 or so, and you'll have a hand truck there with you. So I was like, oh, okay, you know, that made me feel a whole lot better. We get to that point where he's like, okay, is this something that you want to do? We can go ahead and set everything up. That's basically like your interview, just FYI. If you ever get to that point where you're talking to someone, that's pretty much your interview. And it's not, they're not asking you typical interview questions. It's very much like Amazon. Like when you apply for the job, if they contact you, you pretty much have the job. They schedule me to come in and fill out like paperwork and stuff. FedEx, unlike Amazon, you have to have a DOT physical. So that's paperwork that I had to go and pick up, and then I had to take it. There's like a clinic here that they send you to. FYI, when you go to that clinic, I looked at the reviews online and I kept hearing people or reading people saying, oh, it takes forever, it takes forever. Yes, it does. It takes like half a morning, really. So if you're going through this process with FedEx and you get to that part, just know you need a chunk of your day, like half a day basically, to get through that process, because it is long. So the clinic that I went to, it was walk-in, so I didn't have to have an appointment, but regardless, like it's gonna take a while for them to get through you. You go in, you sign in at the front, and then they give you paperwork to fill out, and then you turn the paperwork back in, and then you sit back down, and then they call you back up there for something you have to sign. There's something that they send you, like a link that they send you on your phone, and so then you sit back down and you complete the stuff on your phone, and then you submit that, and then they call you back. It's a whole process, that part. Then you finally go back to the back and you sit down, and there's like a nurse that takes like your vision tests and I guess blood pressure and stuff like that. That's when I first had issues with my blood pressure. It was being a little high. But so you do that, and then you actually meet with I'm not sure if he was a doctor. I want to say he was a physician assistant, but yeah, you finally get to meeting with him, and it's really quick. Like, you go through all of that, and then you're only with him like 10 minutes. He did recheck my blood pressure. I guess because my blood pressure it was high, but it wasn't like, I guess, too high. Whatever, he actually gave me a pass. He was like, okay, I'm just gonna recommend that you make an appointment with your doctor to blah blah blah. So he gave me a pass, and I think the card that they give you is good for like 2 years. The company, and I don't know if all of them are like this, but the company that I was working for is very informal. So whenever I got my results back, he was like, yeah, just screenshot it and send it to me. So everything was done that way, like through text messages, scheduled a time for me to come by. Well, no, my start date. Yeah, that was the next step. It was my start date, because I got my uniform, which is basically a shirt, two shirts actually. It was a collared shirt and a t-shirt. So I got that the day that I started. I got there 8 o'clock, and they assigned me a trainer. And my trainer was pretty decent, I would say. I was with him for 2 days. So the first day, training is actually 3 days altogether, but I'll just kind of go through basically what training is all about. He was already loading his truck up, and one of the first things he said to me was like, oh my God, I wish they had told you to get here earlier so that we could have like started this from the beginning, because he was like almost done. But he showed me a little bit that day, and more the day after. But basically, unlike Amazon, with FedEx, you are loading your truck from the inside of the warehouse. Some of the companies I did notice do load outside, but our company was one of those that loaded inside. So the vans, or it's either a van, or they do have like the step-up trucks, the box trucks, or the vans, similar to the Amazon vans. But I believe, I'm probably not gonna say this right, but I believe the FedEx ones are all-wheel drive. So they're easier to get out of kind of sticky situations versus the Amazon ones where you constantly get stuck. The way that they load the vans is somewhat similar to Amazon. Everything is numbered. Your highest number is 1700. Then it'll work its way down. So like 1700, then 1690, 1680, 1670, all the way down to whatever, 1500, 1200, 1100, that kind of thing. And you put the highest numbers in first. So if you were starting with 1700s, those would go in, and you would just work your way out to whatever your lowest number is, okay? Simple enough. Also, so those are certain packages. Those are most of the packages, but then there's also packages that they call the zeros. So like they don't have a number on them, and I can't remember what the explanation was. I don't know if those were like last minute packages that were added on, but you had to go in like that. You have a little scanner. You get a scanner, and then you also have an iPad that has like your directions and things like that. So you go in your scanner and you can check and see like where that particular zero is, and you have to write. So like, you look at the package before it. So if the package before it was like 1300, then this zero is going to be like 1300.1 or something like that, like where you kind of keep up with it that way. So it might not make sense, but just try and keep up with me. I also did pickup, so that would be in the scanner as well, where you pick up packages either from people or from businesses. Everything was like individual boxes. So unlike Amazon, where you have all these small packages like in totes, there weren't any totes, but you still had the carts, like the little push carts where you're just kind of pushing it up to the van and then you unload it. In some areas, where they didn't have the carts, the boxes were just placed on the floor, and then you would just go and put them in your van like so. Left the station, and you know, he was just kind of talking with me, you know, telling me different things, how different it was. He actually used to work for Amazon as well, so you know, we had that to kind of connect with, but he was just telling me, kind of showing me the ropes. And the process is, you know, it's simple. You put a package at an address, you scan it, like that's it. We don't have to take pictures unless it specifically tells you. The first day he drove, and then I would get out with him. So like for like 1/3 of the day, I would get out with him, you know, just to kind of go through the motions, see how he does it, scanning, see what buttons to push, because there's like certain buttons that you push on the scanner, and then when you get back in the van, there's like buttons that you push on the iPad to move on to the next stop. The iPad actually is split screen. So one part of the iPad has like the regular, you know, the regular directions where you have the blue line and you're, you know, following along as you're moving. And then the other side is like a more detailed, like overall map basically of your area. Like you can zoom out and you can see where all your little packages, where all your deliveries are gonna go at. Second third of the day, he was like, okay, do you wanna start putting some packages down yourself? So I was like, okay. So he would drive, and then I would take the scanner and get out, find the package, you know, scan it, put it down. If you're familiar with Amazon, then you know that with Amazon, we delivered a lot of packages, like 140, 200. This job, what immediately struck me was like, they were like, oh God, you never deliver that many packages. No, you're only gonna deliver like, you know, when you're first starting out in training, you're gonna have like maybe 40 or 50, and you work your way up, but at the most, maybe 70 or 80. So I was like, what? Initially, my mind is like, holy crap, like 70 stops, like what? And the last part of the day we switched, and he let me drive, and then he was dropping all the packages. Okay, so I'm like, okay, first day in the bag, I'm like, okay, I can do this. This is easy as pie, right? So the second day, same thing, he's driving. I initially started putting the packages down, and then we swapped, and then it was me driving and him delivering packages to the end of the day. And then I drove back to the station that day. Okay, same thing, you know, we didn't have a lot of stops, didn't have a lot of packages. I did see more of how he was loading his van, and you know, it's really interesting because when I finally got on my own and I started, you know, loading the van, I was trying to, you know, do it how he showed me. Then it was like, you know, a couple of my trainers were like, well, I don't think this is the best method, da, 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 da. So then they wanted to show me a different one, and yeah. In any case, the second day in the bag, and I'm feeling good. My body was not like, I didn't feel like I was about to die. You know, everything was good. It was good to me. You know, I was hearing other things about the job. We're salaried. You make a set amount every day. Is it 150 per day? Which is, you know, the pay, in terms of the pay, definitely it outperforms, you know, Amazon. There are no benefits offered. Some of the companies do offer benefits, but this particular one didn't offer benefits. They had like a disability insurance. So if they ask you to do a rescue, meaning if you finish your route and someone else needs help, so you have to go to someone else and get some packages off of them, they cash app you 50 bucks, like right then and there, cash app it to you. And the guy that was training me was like, if you have to do a really big rescue, then they'll cash app you like $100. Everyone has like a set number of packages that they are to deliver, and then it's like if you go over that number for every package, like so say your number is like, I don't know, I'm just gonna pick a random number, say your number is like 50. If you actually end up that day with like 60 packages, then you get paid $1 for every additional package. All of your stops are in the system, meaning you can look on the little scanner and you can see all of your stops. Well, because they're still adding, you know, the warehouse is still adding packages to your load. So while I'm sitting here editing this, I realized that I must have accidentally deleted the next clip. So I'll have to kind of explain that. But basically what I was saying was, even before you leave the house, like you can go into the app and you can see like where you're going to be delivering at, how many packages that you have, how many stops that you have, that kind of thing. But once you actually get to the station and start loading up, because the warehouse is still working, they're still churning out packages, you could actually end up with more packages than you started out with. And this happened to me more often than not. Actually, it happened to a lot of people. Like that's kind of the thing. So if I started off with maybe 30, 40 packages, by the end of the loading up process, and this one day in particular, I had like almost 80 packages. So, and the whole thing is when they're training you, they tell you, okay, pack your boxes in tight, you know, make sure everything is like in order, but like close together to make room and whatnot. But, the thing about that is you pack your boxes in there, but if they're still bringing out packages, if you're supposed to be putting everything in order, and then all of a sudden, like you started off with 1,700 and you're way back at the 1,200s now, closer to the end of your van, and then they come out with something that's like 1,600, 1,500, it messes up the whole system. So then it's like, okay, well, where do I put this package at? And this happened like I want to say the very first day that I was by myself, like they brought out a whole bunch of packages towards the end, and I couldn't go back and I couldn't take everything back out just to insert those packages. I ended up having to just stick those boxes like right there at the end of the van. So of course, when I finally got out, and we were like behind that day because I don't know, some days we didn't leave out as early. They didn't let us leave as early as we did in training or whatever. I don't know. It was very weird. But in any case, yeah, that like really tripped me up. And so when I finally got out on the road and I had like all of these packages unnecessarily cluttering up the very back of the van when I needed to get to packages that were like behind it, long story short, everything got all mixed up, and it was just a really, really, really shitty day. Like two of my managers, one of them was already out delivering. The other manager ended up coming out as well, and both of them like took boxes off of me. So one of them took like all of my zeros, and then the other one took some packages as well, because I was like so far behind because I was having to take everything out to get to these other packages. And I know you might say, well, why don't you just deliver the packages that are there? I thought of that as well. But the thing is, everything is in order. So if I had started with those outnumbered or out-ordered packages, I would have just been like zigzagging, you know, back and forth. And that would have taken even more time as well. So that's why it's very important how you load up your van so that the map, you know, you go in order from what is in the map, and you're able to, because it should be very simple. You should just literally park your van, get out, go to the back, and the package should be like right there. So, and if it's not, obviously, you know, you're taking up way more time. So that's what I was doing that particular day. Like I was like taking out boxes, sitting them on the street, and like going through and trying to sift through and find other boxes that I actually needed. So that was crazy. Another issue, I should say, that I had was just the way that our company and Amazon, or sorry, not Amazon. Why do I keep saying Amazon? Our company and FedEx, it was very weird. It was a very weird dynamic. There was a lot of tension constantly between like the managers and the people there at FedEx. And I didn't really get it. I still don't understand it, because technically our company was supposed to have been like the top delivery, whatever, that was there. They were like number one, but there was always so much tension. Like, and they would say stuff. When I'd ask one of the managers about it, I was like, what is going on? Like, today it just feels off. People are arguing. And he's like, no, they just jealous of us. They don't like us. And I'm like, wait, what? Why? Like, that doesn't make any sense. If we're the top, y'all are like the top, I don't even know what you call it, but basically they were the best delivery team there. They delivered the most packages. So I'm like, why don't they like you? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. You would seem like, you know, they'd be falling all over you. But there was just constant tension. And then FedEx would do things. So like, where we would normally load up at, you know, all of our vans, you know, have their own space, but then they would make them come in and like move the vans around. So then all of our vans would be like on top of each other, or they would be in front of other people. So that happened one time. There was a day that I came in and our vans were parked in front of another company's trucks, like their box trucks, and the box trucks are loaded by the packers, so the drivers don't actually load them, but they can like go in and you know, check over everything. But because those truck drivers were ready to go, and then, you know, their owners came out and they were arguing with our managers like, hey, you need to tell your guys to move, blah 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 blah. It was just really crazy and really weird. Or something like, you know, we had to, normally we could like just drag our carts to our vans through like inside the actual warehouse. Well, something happened and they blocked off the area where we normally would walk through, and we ended up having to drag our baskets like around the long way, like outside of the warehouse and then around and back inside the warehouse to where our vans were, which of course took up, you know, more time. And yeah, it was just weird stuff like that they, I don't know, they just explained it like, well, FedEx is just hating on us or upset with us or angry with us. And I'm just like, why? What? Like, I don't understand. So that was weird. That was like a very weird dynamic, just to constantly have all of that like tension and like arguing between managers and FedEx. Just really, really strange. Like, I literally think that I worked there for 4 weeks. The first week was in the hole, as they say. So I didn't get paid the first week. I got paid the second week. I told you it's $150 a day. You get paid every week, which is good. That's similar to Amazon. Every Friday, but I think it came out like Thursday night, something like that. It's like the tension and just the stress. And then we're working inside. There was no AC. Like, everyone kept saying, oh, like they had these big jumbo fans. And I'm like, oh my God, like it's so hot in here. Like, it's like sweatshop hot, okay? And they were like, oh, you know, the AC will come on like as it gets further into the summer. And I'm like, bro, it's like 90 some degrees outside. There's heat advisories. Like, literally, when you come in the morning, by the time you finish loading your van, your whole body is drenched in sweat. And I have a picture that I took, I think it was the first day that I was by myself. And I took a picture of myself at, like, right after I loaded up the van, and I got inside and like sat down and turned the van on, turned the AC on. Like, you are drenched in sweat. There's still that feeling of like, okay, when you finish loading your van, like, you gotta sit there and like regain everything, electrolytes, like composure, everything, before you can like even move on, you know. So there's that part. It was incredibly hot. It was stifling. And God, don't let the door accidentally close while you're in the van loading up the van, because it is like a death trap. Like, there was at one point I had to climb through the front of the van to get out because the door wouldn't open. I thought I was gonna die. More often than not, you're gonna have some really heavy boxes that I felt like I needed a hand truck for. It's kind of laughed at, like, but I'm like, dude, I'm 5'1", like a woman, like I'm not like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I did love the areas that I delivered in. So we were in like parts of Durham, but then like Hillsborough. So it was like, it was country. Roxborough, it was rural, it was country, you know, seeing farms and horses and deer. Oh my God, I saw deer up close. Snakes, oh my God, the snakes scared me. The very first day when I went out with my trainer, I saw snakes and I was like, oh my God, like black snakes. And he's like, yeah, you gotta, you know, be careful and look out for those things. And I don't think I really thought much of it, because I was like, well, I've been out in the rural areas before when I was with Amazon. But what I didn't realize, what didn't dawn on me until later, was like, okay, Adrienne, when you started with Amazon, it was in the winter time. You're in the summertime now, so that's a little bit different. That's actually a lot different. One particular day, I actually went out and I was making a delivery, and it was on a long, you know, still the long driveways, which I didn't really mind as much, because again, it was well into daylight, you know, it wasn't like I was working at night. So anyway, I was putting the package down, making a delivery, and this particular stop, I wasn't to go to the house. They had a box. So I get to the box, I get out, walk the box over, and as soon as I lift the top, something flies out at me and stings me on my arm. I actually still have the little spot right here on my arm. You can kind of sort of see it. The skin is dark here. So yeah, I have to work on that. But I was stung by what I think was a wasp. It wasn't a bee because it wasn't yellow. It was like solid black. But I was stung like immediately. Like I wasn't swatting at it or anything. I didn't fan it. It just literally, as soon as I lifted up the box, I was stung. And y'all, I am 37 years old. I've never been stung by anything before, like bee, nothing. It started hurting, like it really started hurting. And I was like, oh my God, what do I do? And I think I might have ended up like dropping the box. I'm struggling, like trying to pick up the bag and like throw it into the thing and close it down. Ran back into the truck and got in. I'm like, oh my God, like I'm freaking out. Like, what do I do? Trying to reach out to my managers, both of them. Nobody was responding to me. Looking on Google, like what to do when you're stung by a wasp. Like I'm trying to read all this stuff and I'm in pain at the same time. End up like taking my water bottle and like rinsing my arm off. I don't even know if that helped or whatever. Fortunately, I had like a little mini first aid kit. I had like some alcohol wipes or something in there, so I like used that over the area, and then I just like covered it with a band-aid, because like that, I didn't know what else to do. I'm sitting there, like I ended up texting the managers. It's obviously, it's not a gunshot wound, but it was still painful. It was still a first experience for me. Like, okay, I'm just gonna continue on. They still did not respond back to me. Like nobody replied back to me at all. So I continue on with my route in pain, made all my deliveries, and you know, I go back into the station, and as I'm pulling in, you know, figuring out where to park it, and one of the managers is there and he's looking at me, he's like, everything okay? And I must have given him this look like, Negro, did you not see my message? Did you not read them? Did you not get, like, what was the issue there? And I'm like, y'all didn't say anything. Y'all didn't check on me. You didn't do anything. Like, what the fuck? You know, I could have, you never know. Like, I could have had some bad reaction, which it turns out I did end up having a bad reaction. But I could have had some weird reaction and, you know, ended up in a worse position than what I actually was. Like I could have died or something. You never know. I could have been allergic and had a really serious reaction. Like y'all didn't reply. You didn't reply. You didn't respond. You didn't call me. Nothing. I was pissed off. I was seriously pissed off at that point. I was ready to go right then and there, because I'm like, yeah, that they don't give a fuck about you, Adrienne, at this point, you know? Pain. I think I got home and I tried like some ice or whatever, and I took some pain pills. Later on that night, like I started having, I don't know, like I think I took a picture of it, so I'll try to insert these little mini blisters that started appearing on my arm, like just a group of them. It was just getting bigger. Like I could literally look at it and tell like it was getting bigger. It was itching, you know, and I'm trying like not to scratch it. I messaged my doctor and she told me to use hydrocortisone. So I'm like, okay. I started using the hydrocortisone and it made it worse. Like the blisters were growing on my arm. I'm like, oh my God, like what the fuck? I don't know what to do. So I took a picture and sent it to my doctor through, we have an app that we use. So I sent it to her and she's like, well, yeah, go ahead and we'll schedule an appointment for you to come in. And she wanted me to come in that day. And I think I was like, by the time she responded back to me, I was already on my way to work. So I was like, okay, I'll just come in tomorrow. So I went ahead to work and then I let my job know because they were still like, nobody did any like, what do you call it? Like accident report or incident report or anything like that. So, and nobody really said anything like to me, like at all. It was just like, okay. Messaged them all and I was like, hey, I'm not gonna be in tomorrow. Like I said, I was upset. I was really pissed. And I was like, I'm not gonna be in tomorrow. I'm going to the doctor to see about my arm. Okay, and left it at that. So, and I included the hiring manager in that message as well. I went to the doctor that next day. Doctor called it cellulitis of the arm. So I was on an antibiotic twice a day for 7 days. And basically, you know, she just told me, you know, keep it clean, keep it dry. You know, the hydrocortisone was not working, obviously. So I stopped using that. For whatever reason, I ended up using, like something told me to put coconut oil on it. And y'all, thank God I did. Because that coconut oil, I feel like helped to start to clear it up. Like I could literally, I put coconut oil on it like in the morning, I think, and by later on that afternoon, I could already see it. Like it was big and I could already see it like getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So the coconut oil definitely saved me. And it's real coconut oil. I think I got it from Whole Foods. It was like expeller pressed, cold pressed, something like that. But it was a good coconut oil. You know, I never had a reaction like that. And I grew up in the country, so I've been around, you know, mosquitoes and things like that and just being outside, but I never ever had this issue before. The day before I quit, the hiring manager, who's still in Arizona, by the way, because I guess he goes back and forth between the two, like managing whatever here in North Carolina and managing the one in Arizona or helping out at the one in Arizona or whatever. He ends up sending out a text message, like a long text message. And there's several of us, like there's, I don't know, maybe, I don't know, 7 or 8 of us that are included in the message. Like, it's basically, it starts off, you know, okay, like, hey, everybody, I want to, you know, thank you guys for doing good work out there, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, it switches gears to, oh, but we're having these issues, you know, I don't know if you guys need to be retrained. Or what he was complaining about was that people, and I don't know if I was included in that, I have no idea because there wasn't a discussion. This is like one of those general conversations, but he's like, certain ones of y'all are not coding packages right when you're bringing them back. So, and how to explain this? So if you, say for instance, you have packages that weren't on your route, or you weren't able to get to, like, because that happened like once or twice with me, and they were like, well, just bring them back because it was late, especially that day that I was out like after 5 o'clock. And I think I had another day where I was out late like that. So, you know, he's like, you know, you guys have to make sure that you're coding them right. There's nothing that pisses so-and-so off. Let's just, the owner basically is what who he was referring to. But there's nothing that pisses her off more than people who don't code packages right. And I'm just like, mind you, this was right after I had went to the doctor. And he sends out this text message. And then towards the end of the text message, he goes into this, and yeah, if you're gonna take days off, make sure that you put in a 2-week notice. You know, there's no guarantee that you're gonna get it, especially if a lot of people are applying for those days, but just make sure that you put in a 2-week notice. I probably stared at my phone for like 5 or 10 minutes, like rereading it over, like making sure, am I reading this right? Let me just make sure that I'm not, you know, missing something or some word or something. But mind you, when I messaged everyone that I was taking tomorrow to go see about my arm, like I said, he was included in that message. And again, no one replied back. No one replied back. Okay, all right. You know, hope everything, you know, gets better. Da, da, da. Like nothing. No response back. And it was the same thread where the hiring manager was in, and then the other two training managers, like all 4 of us were in this thread. So he didn't reply back to that part. He sends out this text message. So, and I'm just like, I can't help but think that you're talking to me, especially the part where you're talking about taking days off. And you know, I'm just like, in my head, I'm like, oh my God, like my arm, this is something serious. Like I was put on antibiotics for a reason, because this cellulitis, like it can be serious. You know, it wasn't something that I was gonna sit there and put in a 2-week notice. 2 weeks, I might have lost my damn arm. That was the last straw. Like not even kinda, that was the last straw for me. I actually was planning on going back to work, but I kind of sat with that message. I even sent it to a friend of mine. I was like, wait, am I the only one? Like, because I wanted to make sure, like, am I just being crazy and unreasonable? And yeah, I was just like, I slept on it that night, and I woke up the next morning and I was like, yeah, I'm done. I'm done. I realize and recognize now that I don't have to put up with like shit from people if I don't want to. I don't have to do that. I really don't, and I'm not going to. I think the clincher for me was that, mind you, I had left the apprentice job because I was gonna try to do 3 jobs. I was gonna try to do the apprentice tailor, I was gonna do Lyft, and then I was gonna do the FedEx job. Well, then of course, once I got the FedEx job, it was like, yeah, this is not, all 3 of these are not gonna work. So I was still doing Lyft because I had the Lyft vehicle, and I had to, you know, I had the rental fee, so I had to do X number of rides in order to at least cover the rental. And you know, that first week, Sunday, I woke up super early, drove all day. I managed to make the rental, which was $320 some. And I was like, wait a minute, Adrian. Let's do this math again. Yeah, you know, it was one of those things where the math just wasn't mathing. And then when I'm having all these problems, and then when that happened with my arm, the lack of care and concern, and then on top of that, the environment. So, you know, working at Amazon, there was more, it was male or female there, you know, just working. It was kind of half and half, which is what I'm trying to say. It was kind of half and half. Working at FedEx, it was mostly male. It was probably 99% male. The women that were there were like packers mostly. But as far as drivers, especially with our company, it was mostly male. And when you're in these mostly male environments, as I found out, there's a lot of male ego. There's a lot of just behaviors and stuff that I personally don't really want to be around for that amount of time. And you know, I was just stupid stuff that was happening. It made me feel like, you know, grade school. Boys are like picking on the girls, but they actually like them. Like stupid shit like that. I'm like, I'm almost 40 years old. I know y'all are like 30, 40 years old. Are we still doing this? Stupid stuff that these dudes were doing and ways that they're, I just, yeah, I was over that. I was over that as well. So you know, I finally sat down and was like, wait, if I can make this amount of money doing this, then why the fuck am I still here? Pretty much nothing that was promised was actually happening. Even the first time that I got paid, there was a delay in that where I had to reach out to my manager and say, hey, I haven't gotten paid yet. And then like a couple of hours later, it finally came through. Even to this day, I don't have my check stubs. I'll touch on that more later. Nothing that they promised was actually what I was experiencing, basically. So, you know, the hours were not, it was not working from like 8 o'clock to 2, 3 o'clock. No, that was not happening. It was not. And then it was like, there was complaining. Like I would hear conversations as I would walk up. You know how you know people are talking about you, but they don't come right out and say it. But just things like, when we were working, you know, we were getting back in here, da 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 da. I'm like, what? Really? This is like my first week. Like my first week, I think it was maybe day 5 or day 6. And I'm still learning these like, come on, seriously, really, you're complaining about how long I'm taking on the route when you guys say that you're not gonna ride us about the amount of time. You tell us that, hey, you can finish early, or you can, you know, you can take your time. If you wanna take a break, you wanna slow down, you can do that as long as you know, deliver your packages and come back. There was also another thing that I figured out was, I guess the managers are supposed to stay there until everybody gets back. Kind of like the same with Amazon. Like the managers are there until all the drivers come back in, except they're not. So I was getting back in. I know there was one day where like I needed help. Like when you get back to the station, there's like a certain thing that you have to do to sign out of the device and then do the iPad. And I needed help with that. And I remember calling both of the managers. No one picked up. So I'm like, and I ended up asking another girl, and she was like a packer, so she couldn't help me. So yeah, and that might have been what they were talking about in terms of like how you sign out. But and I'm like, well, okay, but nobody was helping me. There was no support. So what, I mean, what, did you think I was just gonna stay there all night? Like by that point, it was just a shit show. I'm to the point now where I will give a 2-week notice if I feel like you are deserving. Like with Amazon, you know, I saw the owner. Even though I got to the point where I didn't like that job, I still respected him enough and felt comfortable with him enough to say, hey, I'm gonna give a 2-week notice. With this job, it was completely different. Like there was just a lack of care and concern. And I was just like, you know what? Fuck that 2-week notice, Adrienne. Just go ahead and let them know you're leaving. And that's it. And that's what I did. I sent them a message because we're dealing with these text messages. So I sent them a text message like they've been sending me. And the very next day, I got my shirts together, the 2 shirts, the markers that I had, the ID, the gas card. Oh, so you get a gas card. I don't know if I mentioned that, but they give you a credit card basically. And that's how you get your gas every day. You keep it with you. All of that, I wrapped it up in a little bundle and I took it there to the office and security and dropped it off. Security tried to give me a little static like, oh, I don't know that company. I was like, boy, if you don't take this shit, this shirts, like seriously. Then he finally was like, oh yeah, I know them. I dropped that stuff off and I left. And that was it. We're going through right now, like, because like I said earlier, I was there a month, like 4 weeks, probably 4 weeks exactly. And I've never received a pay stub. Like never. It's supposed to be you're supposed to have access to the ADT app and go in. And I kept asking about it. Even before I even thought about quitting, like I was asking about it. And I never got that information. And I ended up having to contact the North Carolina Department of Labor. And I had to file a claim. Like I called them initially. I'm like, hey, this is what's going on. How do I go about getting this? They're not, you know, they're not responding to me or whatever. And I had to file a claim. And so I now have, I got an email, like a confirmation that they've received it, blah, blah, blah. And I guess the next step that the guy told me, he's like, well, we have to give them time to email us the check stubs and then we will send them to you. And then once that's done and you received it and everything, then we'll be able to close out, blah, blah, blah. I was concerned because I'm like, okay, so what happens tax time when I need my W-2s? And he's like, well, that is like a separate department. So yeah, that joy when it's tax time and I have to go through that, I feel like that may be another process as well. But it's just crazy. Like, I feel like at that point it's pettiness. because like it doesn't take that long. Amazon actually use ADT. So I know I'm familiar with ADT, and it doesn't take nothing to give someone access so that they can access their stuff. Like, you know, at that point, it's just you're being petty for no good reason. It is North Carolina law that your employer has to give you access to your pay stubs. So yeah, that's where we are. It's different from Amazon. Like, I left Amazon because I didn't like the job anymore. It was really hard on my body. But I still left on good terms, you know. All of the jobs that I've done little reviews or whatever on, I'm not trying to say don't work for this company or don't work for them or whatever. It's more so me giving my experience just so you kind of have an idea. You might be, you know, you may work for Amazon or FedEx and not have this experience at all. You could have a completely different experience. And if you do, that is great. That's fantastic. But, you know, I'm just sharing my experience. And yeah, that's it. That's what it is. I feel like these jobs, especially in terms of delivery, they're good for people who maybe, I don't know, maybe you have like a set goal in your mind that like you're trying to raise money, or like you're trying to save money for XYZ, so you want to do this. Or, you know, maybe you just got out of prison. I know that was one of the things when I remember doing the application. It was saying like, oh, you know, if you have something on your record, you know, we can work with you on that. And especially when I started having those issues with the dudes, like just acting weird, that kind of was in my mind. Like, okay, yeah, that maybe there's something there as to why, you know, they're acting like that. I know that they'll hire you if you have something on your record. Now, how bad that something can be, I really don't know. I couldn't say. But I think if you're getting out of jail or prison or whatever, and you're looking for something that you can go ahead and get into, like if you're trying to do right, you know what I mean? Like not bullshitting or anything, you know, then it's a good job for you, right? You've got all that energy that you need to burn off anyway. So yeah, I think that's good. There weren't like a lot of females, like I said, that worked there. There was another girl, like my size, like my height and everything. I didn't see her often, so I don't know if we were working different days or what, but yeah, I do know that there was another girl. There was another girl also, but I think that we were the only 3 female drivers that I saw. Like, I don't remember seeing any other female drivers. There are times when they may be slow and they'll call you and tell you to not come in. And actually, I was surprised because I knew that, like I heard that part, like, hey, you know, certain times of the year we're slow, we'll call you and tell you not to come in. I didn't expect it to be like, it was literally like my second week. I got a text message like, hey, go back to sleep. Basically, that's what it said. And it was like, go back to sleep, we're slow. And I was like, oh, okay. So, you know, there's that. And of course, you don't get paid for days that you don't work. It would seem like a really decent job if everything that they promised you was true. Unfortunately, it wasn't. It was a weird place to work with, like the tension between management and FedEx itself, and just the dudes that I was having to deal with. And when I was stung, and just the lack of care and concern and consideration or whatever, yeah, I was just like, you know what? I could do Lyft and make twice as much during the day and not have to deal with this bullshit. Like, well, there's bullshit at Lyft. Me having to load up these vehicles every day, sweating like a pig inside this factory. Yeah, I don't have to do this. That is my FedEx story. I'm kind of curious to know what other experiences people have had at FedEx. But like I said, I know everybody's experience is going to be different. Some people will have a much better experience. Some people will say, oh, I love it. You know, it pays more than Amazon. You don't have as many stops, but the packages are heavier and your stops are further apart. You get paid every week. Some of them actually pay more. So there's different companies, right? So the pay starts at 150, which is what I was making per day, but some of them actually pay more. Like I think one of them was like 180. It just depends, like you never know, right? So I guess you'd have to know someone to know what that company pays. And I've actually heard from the guy that was training me said that some of the companies do offer benefits. So, you know, I guess you have to like do some research or ask around to see which is which. I think that is it. I think I've covered everything. I think I've shared everything that I possibly can. Again, if you want to do this job, it's good money. You know, just I don't know, maybe have your own first aid kit or take first aid. Just know that nobody's gonna give a fuck if something happens to you. But no, that worried me, especially as a woman being out in these remote areas. Like, what if something seriously were to happen to me? That dawned on me. Like with Amazon, I felt safe knowing that they were tracking me. And if something happened, they were calling me like, hey, why are you slowing it? Like something like that, you know. But being in a situation where nobody checks up on you is like, wow. Like I had to like turn on my location. My location is always on for my kids. The three of us share location. But I was like picking like friends of mine, like, hey, I'm gonna turn on my location. I'm gonna share my location with you just so somebody else knows where the fuck I'm at. Anyway, that's my story. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you learned something from it. But yeah, that's it. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you guys next time.